In a recent New York Times article, working parents from Silicon Valley's tech industry admitted they don't let their own children have any screen time. This means no phones, no iPads, no TVs. And if the very people who are creating the technology are wary of its effects on their kids, shouldn't every parent be just as concerned? Well, that's what we're about to find out. We're joined by education strategist Dwayne Matthews. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you've talked to a lot of parents,
Yes.
and screen time is their #1 concern, and I fully agree with this. Where's your stance? Are you for zero screen time, or some screen time, or all the screen time?
So that's a great question. Listen, I've spoken to 6,500 parents, and they all ask exactly the same thing. And with me, I don't go for zero screen time. I think about managed screen time. And the reason why I do that is because the screen is a tool like every other tool. So it's not about the tool, it's about a plan. Just because I have a hammer doesn't mean I can build a house. I have to have a plan for the house, and then I decide if I want that hammer or not.
Okay, so what's your advice for parents who are concerned about too much screen time? What should they be using that screen for?
So I think, for example, with me, I really think about augmenting my son and augmenting his learning. Let me give you an example. If I read 3 books a night to my son, that's 15 books a week. If, for example, I read 3 books and then my son can read another 7 books through an app, then all of a sudden that goes to 50 books a week. So
Right.
now I can augment his exposure to language. So it really is about what is it that I'm trying to do, and I really hammer that home with parents. What job are you trying to get done, and then go hire the technology to do it.
Well, and it's asking the uncomfortable question. Are you trying to use technology to placate your child and babysit your child, or is your child actively learning from the screen time? And those are 2 very different things, and sometimes questions that we don't want to answer as parents because we feel like we are making a bad choice.
Sure, and you know what? A big part of the challenge with screens and parents is that, I have a 9-year-old and a 1-year-old. When I had my 9-year-old, there was no iPad. There was almost no one that had a smartphone. Today, everybody has that. So the speed in which the technology has come into our lives is really fast. And so a lot of parents haven't spent enough time thinking about, how do I reclaim this device? So I tell parents, you have to reclaim the device. After all, you pay for it.
Right, okay, so during the week, keeping screen time education focused or augmenting the education they're already having. What about on the weekend? Is there time to have a relaxation with your screen time?
So, well, let's talk about the week first of all. In the week, I have something called Pioneer Time. And Pioneer Time is exactly that, no screens, right? So one of the things that we focus on is what kind of skills does he need to know around social, things that are getting lost on the screen. So we have a jar on our table, and the jar has little conversation questions, and we ask that when we're having guests over, or even when we're talking amongst ourselves, because that's important. On the weekend, though, I give him screen time. He's allowed to have screen time, but we have an app limiter on his device that shuts the device down after 2 hours.
So hard limit, 2 hours. Yep. How can parents be proactive in making sure they know what websites their kids are actually going to? Say they have an iPad and they can easily open the internet. How can you limit that? So
great. I have a 2-pack Power Punch combination. There are a lot of manufacturers that'll give out certain ways to control apps. Disney has something, Norton has something. Me personally, I use iPhone because it comes with an app called Screen Time that's free, and then I combine that with a website called commonsense.org. And commonsense.org ranks and rates every site, every app, everything. And then with Screen Time, I have the ability now to say what apps come into the device, when those apps come into the device, how I share it. I can see on my phone his device, and everything on his device is locked that has to come through a code on my phone. So when I have those, we can now have a conversation about what's going to be appropriate, and we can manage that collectively together. And I've actually done that for myself, and I was blown away as to how much time I was spending on social media, and now I have a limit of like 15 minutes.
Okay, so we could spend 10 minutes on social media, but we only have time for a real short answer. What age should kids be on social media?
Well, the actual limit's 13. The real challenge with social media is, you know what, if you think about excessive gossip and envy has never been a good thing historically. And a big part of social media is that. And so how do you limit that? How do you manage that? I tell parents I wouldn't let our kids on social media. There's a component of social media that comes through notifications that's called variable interval scheduling. It's a type of conditioning, and that type of conditioning can lead to addiction. So that is the component that I think we need to be paying attention to, is really about the conditioning that comes through notifications.
Dwayne, thank you so much. It's important to focus on for our kids, but I think we can apply some of this to ourselves as well. Holy smokes. We thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.